Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. This is going to be an incredibly exciting hour. We are speaking to the people who are doing something about the mess we are in. And it is a huge, huge pleasure to be with three fantastic speakers today who are going to tell us about their role in standing up to big tech. We have reached a tipping point, and I know this because I work in AI ethics. I'm a researcher at the University of Cambridge, specializing in feminist and anti-racist approaches to AI. And my PhD was in science fiction, but science fiction written by women writers. And so it's thrilling here to see today people who are using the genre as a way to tell a story about apocalypse, and not apocalypse because AI is going to turn us into paperclips, but because of the links between totalitarianism, the climate crisis, technocracy. These are the really big things that we need to fear and stand up to. So, this event is part of the impact campaign that the citizens are running around 2073, this fantastic film we'll be discussing today. And the citizens are amazing. I've been collaborating with them a little bit. They're a non-for-profit journalism and campaigning organization with a focus on technology and politics. And so it is a great pleasure to be here today to talk to director Asif Kapadia about this latest documentary feature, 2073. The film blends archival footage with science fiction, and the film serves as an urgent warning from a dystopian future where surveillance drones fill the skies and militarized police patrol the streets. And I would argue that science fiction is often not fiction at all. And indeed, this is the message of the film. This is the present within which we live. In the context of 2073's sharp critique of our current political climate, that highlights the unchecked power of big tech and authoritarian leaders and the implications of AI, surveillance, and militarization, the citizens and ooto have this agency that we'll discuss have teamed up to answer the ever-present question: what can we do now? So first up is Kyle Taylor, who's the founder of Resistance Hub, which is aimed at supporting civil society in exile to counter the growing tide of authoritarianism in democratic countries. He's a leading expert in digital democracy reform, platform regulation, and other topics at the intersection of technology and society. So hello, Kyle. Thank you so much for joining us today. Can you tell us a bit about Resistance Hub and why it is so deeply necessary?
Hi, Eleanor. Thanks so much for having me. Yes, I would love to tell you about that. I think I want to just also, as the first speaker, just kind of offer a little framing around how we've gotten to this place of such urgency, particularly around big tech. I think it's slightly unique for me because I was working on the coordinated campaign in 2016 in the US. So I was on the ground with Hillary for America when Donald Trump happened the first time in North Carolina in a swing state. And I was seeing firsthand this cognitive dissonance between what was happening on the ground and what we were seeing online on social media. And I've spent the last decade, nearly since 2016, working specifically around these issues with campaigns around the Vote Leave data breach, Cambridge Analytica data breach, with the Real Facebook Oversight Board, and as well as written a lot about this in a number of books. But more than anything, what I've really been trying to focus on is studying in a historical context fascism and populism through the lens of information control. And I think this is what's so important about what's happening right now following the 2024 US election that makes it different than the 2016 election. Because what we've seen not only are probably a lot of people on this very aware of the role social media has played in society and in life, but we're seeing this time that big tech has lined up behind Trump. No doubt that iconic image from the inauguration people will be familiar with. The front row of seats filled with tech CEOs, the second row of seats filled with the future cabinet who's meant to be running the United States. And what happens when you grow up there, as I did, and then you move, is you become de-radicalized from the sort of cult of America, and you're able to see things slightly differently than when you've grown up in this. And you put that in historical context and you go, okay, things are very bad. So I just want to give you the big three things that happened before Trump won, the three since, and then I'll just tell you briefly about Resistance Hub and why it's come about now. So, I mean, the three things I think that happened before he was elected that it's really important for people to remember in terms of why the idea of resistance and the idea of this overall power of this administration is so frightening. There was the Supreme Court decision in Trump versus United States, which said that anything the president does is an official act, and therefore it is legal, meaning anything the president decides to do now and says this is official, then there is kind of, the Supreme Court says, no way to pursue the president and hold them accountable. There was the anti-NGO bill, HR 9495, that nearly passed with Democratic support that would allow the executive branch to target nonprofit organizations for being terrorist organizations at their discretion. Of course, combined with Kash Patel now at the FBI. And then, of course, the most important thing, this Trump tech tie-up, meaning they completely control the airwaves of where most people are getting information. Of course, you have Musk and X, but we have to remember as well, platforms under the Meta umbrella, which are no longer doing fact-checking in the United States. I mean, this is oligarchy. This is techno-feudalism. This is all wrapped up together. And then the three things we've seen since, of course, the Doge destruction of the federal government and the gutting of it, the Mahmoud Khalil incident at Columbia, of course, a permanent resident who has been disappeared effectively in the United States, married to a U.S. citizen with a green card, and a U.S. citizen who's 8 months pregnant and literally disappeared in the middle of the night. And deemed a terrorist with no due process. And as AOC said, if the federal government can disappear a legal U.S. permanent resident without reason or warrant, then they can disappear U.S. citizens too. And then lastly, very recently, the deportation of alleged Venezuelan gang members under a 1789 law, where a judge had said that they should not be deported, and they did it anyway. And Trump's border czar said, I don't care what the judges think. Of course, an opinion that Trump has doubled down on. And if the courts no longer work, then democracy no longer works, and there is no longer accountability. And so right after the election, I thought about the need ultimately for there to be probably some form of civil society in exile. And thinking about that in historical context around when you have the rise of fascism or Nazism and so forth, you have a government in exile often that emerges, an alternative voice that exists outside the country to be able to function. The Democratic Party right now in the United States is polling on 27%. Trump is polling on 47%. And I've always seen the power of civil society to be that alternative space and alternative voice in these moments. And I felt very much that what we would need is a plan B. So, Indivisible and others are doing incredible frontline resistance work in the United States. But it's my feeling that it could reach a point, if it has not already, where it will become untenable for a number of people who are working to hold this government to account to operate. And that's really what Resistance Hub is about, is having that plan B, that backup plan. So first and foremost, connecting, so bringing together organizations and activists, protecting individuals and people themselves. So I've been contacted already just in the last 24 hours by a few very prominent journalists who are increasingly concerned about their ability to report effectively from within the United States, preserve both institutional knowledge and, of course, data. And I think this is a really huge one. What happens if the FBI orders a raid of the American Civil Liberties Union and everything that they've stored, all of their history of work, is gone overnight because the FBI takes their servers? We're already seeing that in the federal government. A plan to rebuild afterwards, and then, of course, resist in the moment at every opportunity. So if we take it back to how to build an internet free from billionaires, I really believe that we need to maintain how we do that now, because I think there's going to be an incredible opportunity to reimagine things like the technology space, and the internet, among a lot of other things in society, when this fascist regime eventually, inevitably has its downfall, because they always eventually end. This never lasts. And so making sure that we have the resources and the knowledge and the preservation of data and information ready to go to create the world we want after this, I think is the point of Resistance Hub.
That's wonderful. And I love this message of be ready. What do we need to know now so that we can pounce on any opportunities as they arise? Thank you so much for that. It's terrifying to see that now we have disappearances and this perennial state of emergency within which, the states operates so that Trump can effectively do whatever he likes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, and as a civil rights lawyer told me 2 days after the election, when I said, "What's the red line where we know it's over?" She said, as soon as they stop recognizing court decisions, as soon as they disregard judges, then it's done, it's over.
Yeah, it's interesting to see these different points at which you can call just true disaster. What does it actually look like to see democracy really fade away? What's your cutoff line? And for everybody, it's different depending on what sector they're working in. Thank you so much. So next, we've got this another terrific guest. So Sherif Elsayed-Ali, who's a custodian for Free Our Feeds. And the campaign this is a campaign that's harnessing the potential of Bluesky, which many of you may be on, in order to build a new and independent foundation for an entire ecosystem of interconnected apps and different companies that have people's interests at heart. And that may sound a little complicated, so I'm really excited for Sherif to tell us what this is all about and how it works.
Thank you so much, Eleanor, and love kind of listening to everything that Kyle said, and indeed so much to do, and I think we absolutely 100% that we need to start now. I'm Sherif Elsayed-Ali. I'm with Future of Technology Institute. I am one of the custodians for Free Our Feeds, and perhaps to kind of explain what Free Our Feeds is and why it's there and why we launched it a couple of months ago. Kind of go back to probably around 2010, 2011, when maybe a little bit before that, even 2007, 8, around the time that Facebook and Twitter, and now X, at the time Twitter, were really exploding, where we've had lots of people starting to join them, and where they've become, and social media in general, including a few other networks, became really the hub of public discourse. But not just that, but also our relationships with our friends, our families, with Facebook in particular. Like at the time, everybody, this is where they connected with people they haven't seen in a long time, or this is where they kept in touch with their loved ones. And then obviously Instagram and LinkedIn and TikTok and various forms of social networks. And what's very interesting there is if you look at most other areas of technology, the companies that were the biggest ones in 2007 are not the biggest ones in 2025. That is extremely unusual. And the reason for that is very simple, is that they've built the networks in a way that you cannot leave. I mean, of course you can leave, but if you leave, you lose out a lot. And essentially, this is done by making those networks fully integrated and fully closed. So you cannot leave. If you leave Facebook, you lose all your friends, all your connections, hundreds, sometimes thousands of people that you have people you have no other means of connecting with. If you leave X, you lose all your followers, and so on and so forth. And that's really the key to their continued sort of dominance. It's not that they're necessarily the best things that could be. It's not that other innovations, other networks couldn't be built that are much better for us and much more enjoyable, but that we have now become a captive audience of these networks, and they can do whatever they want. And until very recently, it's been very, very difficult to do very much about it. That is in practice. So how they do this? First, they own the infrastructure. They own the computing infrastructure, kind of all the computers and servers that this stuff runs on. It's theirs. But key to it is something called the social graph. Essentially, the social graph is the connections that tie you to people. So if you're on Facebook, it's your connections to your friends and family. Facebook owns that, not you. And it takes like thinking about it, that you do not own your own relationships with your friends and family. Something is really, really wrong about that. But it's the same thing across X and Instagram and all of these. So if you're a creator, if you're an artist that makes a living and kind of promote your work through Instagram, you're the same. You have the same issue. You're stuck because if you decide to leave it, you're gonna lose all your thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of, maybe millions even of followers, and you lose that your essentially the way that you work. So what kind of the alternative are things called open networks. Essentially, these are different ways of making social networks. That means that each person owns their connections. They're able to take their identity to different social networks. And essentially, you may have heard of Mastodon in the past, the Mastodon and sort of that kind of the ecosystem around that. They tried to do this before. But one of the hardest things is that is to get to a point where there are enough people so that a network can sustain itself. Because if there's no one, or if there's few people and fewer people go there and so on and so forth, and it's kind of a cycle that's hard to break. What happened a few months ago is that Bluesky, which is another social network built on this open infrastructure, did something that hasn't been done for maybe 15 years, and is to break through that network barrier, essentially. And today they have over 32 million users, which really kind of make it self-sustaining, and it continues to grow. And that opened up a whole load of possibilities, because essentially it's built on a technology infrastructure that means that anyone can build applications on top of it. People can build an application social network that is a direct competitor to Bluesky on the infrastructure that Bluesky is built. But not only that, if Bluesky decide to just do something really bad one day. I mean, they're a great team today and fantastic company, but let's say a few years from now, things change, there's management changes, and they decide to go a little bit like Elon Musk with Twitter. People will be able to move and take their data, take their connections, take everything, not lose anything, and go somewhere else. And that acts both as an alternative for people, but also prevents companies from doing things that are too bad. Now, what the beauty of that infrastructure is called @proto, that Bluesky is built upon, is that it's open source, but more importantly, it enables the development of all sorts of other applications. So you could develop an alternative to Instagram, and some people are starting to do that already, an alternative to TikTok, to Facebook, to LinkedIn, all on the same identity, on the same network. So each one can start straight away with those connections already existing, and then you don't have that issue of having to deal with recreating your network every time. There's a whole lot of you have so much more control as a user over what you see and how you see it. You can pick your moderation algorithms. On Facebook, on X, you have no choice. You just have to deal with what they give you. So now, if you go on X, I don't know, maybe every other time the first thing you see is Elon Musk, then Elon Musk again, then whatever he chooses he wants to promote that day. And basically, the potential there is to create a whole ecosystem of social media that puts the control back to users and allows the development of all sorts of new companies and new projects on top of that. So Free Our Feeds is a campaign that is spearheaded by a number of technologists, public interest technologists from the US, Canada, UK, and Europe, and essentially looking to create an independent infrastructure for @proto, so that underlying technology under Bluesky, so that it's completely run independent of any specific company or individual, and then be able to seed the building of new innovations and new solutions on top of that.
Oh, the wonders of human ingenuity to fight back. It's so encouraging to hear that people are developing these alternative infrastructures, because it was particularly sad to see in, for example, South Africa, which had an open source policy before Microsoft arrived and privatized the whole system, that this was a possibility, and it still is. This is the work of utopia. It's actually bringing these things to life. It's a terrific endeavor, and thank you so much for introducing it to everybody. I think what you were saying about being able to take our own data, to pick it up, put it in our backpack and move on, that is to me the heart of what these platforms need to do. They need to allow you not only to be able to identify what data is yours, but to have the freedom to take it along with you. And I'm really glad that you referred to these headaches that we have living in complicity with this very systems and platforms that we're trying to critique. It is nigh impossible to get out of Facebook and WhatsApp, and a lot of activist groups happen on it. My workers' union at work is on WhatsApp. It's extremely difficult, as you said, to operate with these ethical headaches at the moment, and it's putting an undue burden on us as people who actually care. So thank you so much for introducing those ideas. I want to pick up next with our next guest, Nicolás Tapia Correa, who's a member of Laboratorio de Popular Medios Libres. Hopefully you can translate that for us. My GCSE Spanish is not pulling its weight at the moment. And this is an incredible space for building autonomous and free technologies to strengthen community networks and activism in Latin America. Nicolás is also part of Yanapac, an autonomous server promoting digital sovereignty through decentralized tools and services. And this is exactly what you're talking about, Sherif, decentralized tools, a way of shifting the power to the margins outside of these sort of central hubs, which we're so dependent on. So Nico, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today. Can you tell us more about your work and how it's an alternative to traditional big tech models?
Hi, everyone. I'm really glad and honored to be here. So, yes, I was listening to Sherif, and yeah,
and
it's
tell us
really
where
important.
you are, Nicolás. Tell us where you are. You've got this lovely background music. Where are you? Where are you speaking to us from?
Hi, everyone. I think it kind of cut. I hope it's fine, the connection now. You're hearing me, right? Yes. Thank you. Sorry. Yes, I'm in the middle of the Amazon forest in Ecuador, because we're working here with the communities to so they can own their own data. That is the thing that we are talking right here. We have to own our data. We have to have privacy of our data, of what we're doing in our digital life, so we can be free, so we can have a dissident voice. We can change the course of things where we are going to. So maybe it will be nice to talk about of our work. So our organization is called People's Free Media Laboratory. We came from the community communication movement that is really strong in Latin America. I'm talking about community radios, community television, all these media that has been growing in our communities since the 40s, from the many years in 1940s. It began the radio community movement in Latin America. And that movement always was questioned about who owns the media, because who owns the media, who owns owns the agenda, and can say, and owns the narrative. That's why the communities, because they needed to put their narratives into the world about what was happening in Latin America, they start to building their own transmitters, radio transmitter, TV transmitter, any kind of transmitter, in a really artisan way, with the hands, with what they have on hands. So that movement, we are part of that movement, and that movement, it has it feels it's really strong. But in the 2000s, it came to us, the digital era, like to say, and the social media, these platforms, and it was a promise that this is the new agora, the new place where everyone can talk. We're free to put our narratives, and if your narrative is successful, you can go everywhere. But But now we have realized that this is a lie. It's a real when you see that the people who owns these platforms sit back right now, sits right back to Donald Trump. You see what is happening. So for us, it's really clear because now we know about the algorithms. We know about how they take our data and they turn it to a commodity. That is what is happening in the social media. They're taking our data and turning it out to their commodity, and that's how they make rich with the analysis of what we do on the digital space. So we work, like what we're saying, we work with communities, and these communities have always been defending their land. And when it came the digital era, all the digital tools were really good, useful, and camera, all the use of social media and stuff. But uh, at the end, you can put your stuff there, but it doesn't go. It doesn't go very far because all this the algorithm thing, and also what is more important is that what we see with Donald Trump and these big tech owners is that the government and the big tech are allied. So you can see how many Amazon, Facebook, they see. So they do this transparency work, and they say in Latin America, from the we if the government asks for the information of private accounts, we give them the 80%. So that for us is for people who's defending the land, who's defending, it's really harsh because we know it's really easy to the big tech, so to the government to go closer to the big tech and ask for this information because people that fights against mining, the people that is protecting the land, they are using social media, they are using video to advocate, to recollect proofs of what is happening. And that information, where we're putting that information, we're giving to the big tech, and they own that information, and they know what we're doing because that's their business. So for the community, we start to thinking it's not this digital platform of big tech is not secure for us. It's not secure for the communities. We need to have our own infrastructure with our own servers that they can connect to the whole internet, and I can share what is happening here, how the mining is destroying the river. But that information is secure, is private, and is owned by me. It's not owned by a big tech. Not also by this. Not also because it's necessary to have this information private, so the work of human rights defenders is safer. It's also because these human rights defenders are fighting to so the planet doesn't destroy ourselves with the pollution that we're producing, and all these social media owned by big tech, they have this really big farm of servers that pollute, that take water, they doesn't give work where they are putting on, and also they have not also the where are putting our data, they are building these big infrastructures that for the use of IA. So the IA can use all this data they have and processes and use it for their own business. So that is a really big how do you say way ecological. It's polluting the world. So we say to the communities, and we work with the communities that we're working, building their own infrastructure, building their own servers. They can have the same technology that Meta brings, that Meta gives them, but it doesn't contaminate because it's a small computer owned by them that is powered by solar energy. That's where we're working here. So if they don't want to use internet, if they don't want to use their server, that information in the night, so they can save save energy, they can do it. They can turn it down. I cannot say to Meta, hey Meta, please turn down the server while I'm not using it. So that way we can reduce our ecological footprint doing digital. So I cannot go everywhere, but where we are working here is, yeah, we are working with communities that are doing a land defense process, and there we are showing them how to build their own servers. We call them huertas digitales. It's like little farm, because we say Meta has these like monocultives, bigger, and we say you can have a family farm in the digital area, and that is an autonomous little server that's solar powered, that is connected to the grid, to the whole internet, and you can put there, and you can decide exactly what information goes to the internet and what information stays with the community. This is also important for the community to preserve their knowledge. So again, I go everywhere, but we are working with these communities, this kind of infrastructure, and we are using free software for this, because our main challenges have been like the learning curve, but we are supporting with other projects of free software that are around the world, like Cop Cloud, and they had built like a really nice system to deploy and maintain autonomous server that is really easy for communities that doesn't have the knowledge to do it. And now we are working to translate that. And also the other difficulty that we have been seeing is that it's different in every country, like trying to build a server, because the ICP, the internet providers, they don't like it to us to put autonomous server. They want to consume internet, not to put things in internet. They want to consume what they're giving us. So sometimes it's difficult to put online this kind of servers. So what we have been done is we have doing a working group with different organizations, not mine, other organizations in Latin America. They are working in autonomous server. We have been come together and we have built a VPN proxy server that makes really easy to the communities. No matter what connection they have, they can put in 2 steps their own autonomous server. Even if they have like a Starlink connection, like a ICP from the government, they don't need, because we do the connection through the VPN. And we are really proud of that, because like technology we have been working here in Latin America, now is really making some progress. So that's where we are working here. I cannot go everywhere, but I hope it was good for you.
Nicolas, that's incredible. And I think, the idea of making things from scratch is just so appealing right now, because not only does it improve AI literacy, it gets people to understand what AI is, what it's made of, the bread and butter of it, what the effects are on the environment, but it also solves some much needed problems like midnight doom scrolling, using technology with the rhythms of the sun. And there are some really cool projects across the globe that are doing this. I've got some contacts in Canada that I'd love to put you in touch with, that I think you really like as well. I'm interested in my first question to you all. We've got some questions from the audience that we'll be asking in a minute as well. Thank you so much, audience members, and please write your questions in, and I will say them out loud. My first question is about scale, because certainly where I'm sitting, and the kind of critical AI ethicist who comes in is like, oh, we shouldn't be scaling these systems. Not only is it appalling for the environment, but actually no AI system is universal. Nothing works for everyone in the same way. We need community, local, technologies and ways of thinking about technology. But what does it mean to maybe expand or grow these efforts? Is it possible? What systems and strategies do we need to survive, so that we can scale, expand maybe instead of scale, these efforts in different places? Is it possible, or is it not possible? Is there anyone who wants to respond to that first? Go on. I know all of you have something to say. Maybe Sherif, you unmuted first.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a tough one. That's why I think we were kind of thinking. But one thing I just kind of wanted to maybe highlight is that when we talk about technologies that are more open, more interoperable, things that are not closed by design, what's very interesting there is that they are, even look at it from a pure capitalist point of view, you actually get a lot more market competition, a lot more market freedom in that. You get a lot more, even talking about consumers rather than users, you get more choice as an individual consumer, as a business consumer. So I think one thing that we sometimes miss is that actually, even talking about the economics of the current structures of technology, those are not beneficial, even from a purely, if you look at a kind of a pure economic financial point of view. And the reason we are where we are is that, we have a few companies that have so much power over the system, ability to influence politics and policy, that they kind of keep that close. But one, I would say that one lever that often, us and just generally people kind of trying to push things towards a better technology for the public interest, we often forget is that actually making those economic arguments I think we're in very, very solid ground, and I think we need to kind of leverage that more.
I will pass on to Nicholas in a second, but I'm really glad you mentioned that, because a lot of thinkers have said, look, even if you are a neoliberalist and you believe in the free market, this is not a free market what we have, and hence all the antitrust cases against big tech. We do not have the choice as consumers right now. So even capitalists need to know that this is not the kind of capitalism that they think it is. And I think that's quite a nice way of speaking across the political aisle, if you will. Thank you so much, Nicolas. Tell us, can we grow these kinds of projects?
Yeah, sure. Sure. I think the technology is here. It's really easy now to deploy this kind of servers. I'm not a technician. I am a journalist. But now we bring this technology to the communities, and it works, and it's free to use if you use the free software, and we can use old computers that to use to do this kind of server that they have the capacity to sustain the service that we need. The difficulty is to build a community. We have to build a community of persons that share this knowledge, that also make grow this knowledge. So what we are doing, because we are really inspired, like the free software movement, is to build this community of sysadmin or system administrators in Latin America that have this vision of how to build this infrastructure. So now we are working in schools. The last one we did it in Ecuador. The next one we are going to do it in Argentina. And this school, we bring together the person that are working in these systems, and they let them to know each other, to share their knowledge, to share their experience, so they can make bigger bonds, to have when they go back to their communities, they will be very far away. But if they meet, if they have been, if they have been part of this community of persons that they have the same vision for the technology, they have this love to share the knowledge. If someone has a problem with this infrastructure, with how to resolve a problem, or how to deploy a new thing in this infrastructure, they share their knowledge. And that is something that has happened really. We have seen it in other kind of projects, in free media movement, and we have to build this community of technicians, and that's what we think we have to build. Know each other, have these places right here where we're from Latin America. We didn't know people that have this kind of vision from other parts of the world. So it's really nice. I really like to have your contacts later, because we have to come together. We have to have these communities be bigger and diverse, because like he was saying, also Kyle, the challenge of this Fediverse of these other social networks is that people go there and use it and be part of that community. So that's what we have to do now. We have to build communities around this vision.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to now ask Kyle a question from the audience. Thank you to all the people watching. We've got loads and loads of questions coming in, so that's fantastic. My first question is about whether governments in exile risk increasing the fear. And whether, I assume that they mean by this that whether the people who are left in the country become more afraid if the alternative has escaped and left the country, and whether actually that makes resistance harder for the people who are still doing that work on the ground.
Yes, so that's a really good question. I mean, I think from my perspective, I don't think that the government, I maybe wasn't quite as clear in trying to get through so much in the introduction, but I don't think we're at a stage where the idea of a government in exile would really work anymore. Which is why I'm seeing it much more as civil society in exile. Because I do think that you have to have a leading face leading the resistance within the country, but we have to be thinking about two things at once and making sure that we're maintaining infrastructure, knowledge, and capacity and capabilities to be able to rebuild afterward. I will say that, I think another lesson, a takeaway of 2016 versus 2024 in the US context is that in 2016, we saw a much greater desire to sort of pretend like maybe it's kind of normal, or just power through it, or still try and get things done. So there was a whole, we're seeing again from the public's perspective that those who oppose the regime don't want the opposition, the resistance to work with them this time. So in 2016, I think it was 59% of people who were registered Democrats said, yes, please work with the Trump administration to try and get some stuff done. In 2024, it was 67 or 68% of registered Democrats have said, no, do not work with these people. And I think the hardest thing we find ourselves in when you're liberal, progressive people is getting trapped by the tolerance paradox. Right? Getting trapped by our own liberal institutions and thinking that if you're, well, I believe in free speech and therefore they should get to say what they get to say. But we have to remember that the only way that you maintain tolerant societies is to be intolerant of intolerance. Right? If you're using liberal rights and values and institutions to rail against them or dismantle them, then that is not okay. And the biggest struggle I think we have now in this moment is still being able to recognize the difference. And if you spend time in different contexts, it's slightly easier, I think, to recognize the difference. But there's a huge worry of sort of upsetting or offending people. But just sort of, I always think about it like this. Are you using liberal institutions and values to expand rights for those who don't have them and improve the lives of everyone? Or are you using them to suggest that some people don't deserve rights and shouldn't get shouldn't get to benefit from the same things in society that you do? It's a very simple, for me, equation. Expand or reduce. If it's expand, great. If it's reduce, I can't tolerate that. And that's a tougher position for liberals and progressives to take, and it's one that fascists know well.
Wonderfully put, and that's why you cannot balance bias. You're either for making society more inclusive or for society becoming more exclusive. Really, you have to be working for justice, otherwise really you're working against it. I have next a great audience question for Sherif, and it's this. If we are to move away from an ad-supported data farming model, what formats do you prefer for funding the future of the internet?
It's many hundreds of billions of dollar question, right? And this is what the actual kind of the market worth of the kind of legacy social media. I have to say, there is no easy answer to this, but there are answers, and that's something I really want to emphasize. So we're not stuck in this has to be this horrendous sort of type of things where we have no control of our data, our ads are being our data is being sold left, right, and center. One thing that I think is really important to acknowledge is that digital advertising is really core to how the internet works. And I think I would say that, yes, of course, there is space for subscriptions. There is space for things like micro payments and so on. That's true. But it's also important to remember that for a very large proportion of the world's population and the internet population, it's just not feasible to make these payments. And that's really important to remember that. What is possible is to have advertising that is not as harmful or intrusive to people. Advertising that is much more is not built on amassing these huge profiles of people from everything they do online and sometimes offline, and being able to really kind of target advertising in ways that are extremely intrusive, sometimes very, very problematic. Often, in many cases, we've seen kind of pushing things that are actually harmful to people, and we see this a lot with youth, with teenagers and others. Things that are really harmful to them, to their feeds, and there are people trying to do that, and there are smaller companies doing that successfully. But there are things like, for example, just to give an example, like contextual advertising, where you get advertising based on what you're looking for, but also based on having, a level of criteria over who advertises and who doesn't advertise, right? So actually, the intermediaries have the companies serving the ads have enough knowledge of the people putting the ads that they can do some vetting of them. Now, if we look at the issue of advertising itself and look at who's controlling digital advertising, we find that within social media, within the Meta ecosystem, it's Meta itself, so Facebook, Instagram, all of that, and on the open web, so the rest of the web, any other website you do, it's pretty much a Google monopoly. Can look at US case law on that, very recent as well, US cases. And Google has full control almost of every part of that ecosystem. And let's be very, very clear about that, right? I mean, there is very little in terms of checking. Well, there's almost no checking or any very little that Google is doing to kind of ensure that this ecosystem is healthy. Again, this goes back to, this is the problem where you have zero competition, no competition. It's a almost complete monopoly. It's harming not just people, but it's also harming the businesses that advertise and the traditional publishers, so the kind of traditional news industry. So I have to say, yes, there are different things we can think about. We can think about things that are sponsored by specific companies, for example, or specific organizations providing the services this way. We can think about memberships, about things like micro donations, or micro payments, where you could give very small payments to, for example, creators, and about advertising, which is always going to be needed for the internet, for many, many people to be able to use it and to have that equity of access. But advertising that is done better than what's done today.
Could I just add very quickly? I agree with everything you said, Sherif, and I think this is where we get to regulation, which is also goes back to that first question around how do you encourage smaller startups and increase competition, because as you said, Eleanor, this is not even capitalism. These are monopolies that effectively operate as public utilities, but without any public duties. And so I think that's where regulation comes in for the biggest, and simply saying, okay, your founding principle must be safety by design versus engagement by design. Now try and make a profitable product in that frame. That is government intervention that drives innovation. So when the US government when California said you need to have an average miles per gallon of 54 miles per gallon per vehicle in the 90s, and all the car companies said, oh, we're all going to go bankrupt. Did they go bankrupt? No, they found out how to make cars that are more fuel efficient. We can do the same with big tech, and that's the power of government. And I think we have to re-believe in governments to do that work.
The governments are making it hard for us, though, to re-believe in them. But yes, absolutely. Sherif, sorry.
No, just
Agree, Eleanor.
To reinforce is that the key point there is that the current situation where you have a few companies that dominate entire ecosystems of technology is of no benefit to anybody or any company or any sort of tax authority or anybody except these companies. And it's almost, we find ourselves and we let ourselves be in this situation, that there is, in many cases, these are almost all cases, these are US companies. If we look at Europe, for example, how did we end up in this situation, right? And why are we still in this situation? And I think there is very clearly something that can be done, and it's about, and again, saying, don't even look at it from anything but a purely economic, purely market-based point of view. Just create an open market where there is competition, where people have choice. That's it, where consumers have choice.
I love this rethinking of advertising, and tomorrow I'll be speaking at Tech UK, having a workshop, for a public workshop on queerness and data. And to me, the fundamental question of rethinking advertising means rethinking categorization. What does it mean to categorize people and then to sell things to them? And so if you're interested, that will be great too. Nicolas, I'm going to ask you a final question, which is from the audience, who have asked, what community innovation are you seeing as a result of creating this infrastructure? So what are the other positive or perhaps even negative impacts or trade-offs that you're seeing? And I mentioned AI literacy as being potentially one benefit. What else are you seeing?
Yeah, sure. Yes, when the community has access to technology and understand how the technology works, they already start to thinking what else they can do. Here in the Amazon, there's a lot of programs. They're doing monitoring the ecosystem. They're monitoring like the birds, the animals, for example, and they have to process all that data manually. So they have to hire biologists to understand what is happening with the birds. They are thinking if they can right now they're having their own servers to store the data. They say if we can start building our own IA, a local IA that is not connected to the internet, that doesn't send that information to the big tech, it will be a really nice tool, because the IA can look into these many audio files and check if some bird in some place is not singing. If some bird in some place is not singing, something is happening there. Maybe an enterprise is getting there. Maybe it was a pollution. Something is happening there. But it's crucial that that information remains with the community. It doesn't go to the big tech. It doesn't go to the whole internet. But they need also this technology, and that is like a benefit we're looking to see soon, hopefully. So, but also that this doesn't have this also have the problems that bringing the internet here, and the people, if doesn't we don't do about this. We were talking about this internet, this administration person also have to talk with the community and say, well, this is a tool and you can use it for good or for bad. Because when we came with internet here, we see people that goes addicted to video games, it goes addicted to pornography, it goes addicted to all kind of stuff, because it's not to give in the tool. It's not to give the tool and we go away. No, we have to explain to the community what can happen with this tool. And that's why we are talking about this community of people that doesn't only have the technical knowledge, she also have the social knowledge of what it means to bring this big window of occidentality right here in the community that doesn't have that kind of stuff before, and it can do a really harm. So that's our really that's the challenge for us. It's not a technological challenge because the tools are there. It's a social challenge, it's an educational challenge to work with the communities and make them to understand what are the dangers and the opportunities that they have, and they can if they have that information, they can choose.
Amazing. And right now, what we're seeing is effectively people are being given cars without being taught how to drive. And the idea of learning through that tangible material process of making a technology is kind of a privilege. And in the West, you have to have a lot of money and do training and become a software engineer. Whereas, this is something that a real gift that you can give to people. So thanks so much. I have a last question here, actually, for Kyle, who is an American, but actually very British and now in Australia. So thank you for getting up at, oh my goodness, I don't know what time, quite a few hours ago to be here today. Can you tell us, given what you were saying about regulation, what are we sensing about Labour's attitude to data rights now in the UK? What signals are we getting from Starmer about how he's framing our data rights as related to the US trade negotiations? Do you think regulation is even possible? And we were kind of mortified at my research centre at Cambridge to see that the AI Safety Institute has now changed its name to AI Security because Trump doesn't care about safety, but he cares about security. Is this really what we're seeing? Is just Starmer pandering to Trump?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is perhaps the single most disappointing government in my lifetime. It's actually been quite shocking and quite jarring. I mean, I worked with the Labour leadership with around the online safety bill that became the Online Safety Act when they were in opposition, and have been close to their workings on tech. And it's never been great because it's not really great anywhere with any major party, because of this allure, this idea of the mysticism right now of AI, that it's going to like solve every growth problem and like save everything. And it's been interesting to see them become sort of enamored with that, like a social media 2.0. And we all know how the social media aspect turned out. Insurrections and genocides, So, but I have no hope that this government will do anything remotely responsible around tech. They're not doing anything around disinformation provisions on social media that were gutted by the last government in the Online Safety Act. And their pivot on AI is that, I mean, I think that the line was, we're going to mainstream AI into the veins of Britain. That was a direct quote. I mean, it was like this, it's a very visceral approach with AI through their obsession with growth. And their primary objective at the moment seems to be slashing regulation, because it's red tape, apparently, that's holding Britain back, and not a complete failure to build a better relationship with our closest trading partners. The pandering to Trump is very disappointing as well. I think most people will see, and you'd note as well, just that the British public don't support it either. So I think that a shakeup is possible with this government, but I think at the moment still these tech issues, for whatever reason, are not resonating with them as doorstep issues. So as the public, once there's this sort of a really cataclysmic AI event that affects a lot of people, I think maybe they'll wake up and suddenly be like, oh no, we were here all along. But very little hope at the moment. I know, doom and gloom, sorry.
Wow, so Starmer, if you're listening, what are you doing? Come on.
Oh dear, Keir.
Exactly, great. So we've heard a lot of incredible things today that you're doing, and it shows that while we may be disappointed time and time again by the people that we have elected or not elected, as the case may be, there are still amazing organizations and communities who are doing really cool things from the grassroots up. So we've heard about data autonomy, tools that allow us to take our audiences and our communities with us. So it seems as though community is the answer to big tech. And I know that, community is one of those very contested terms at the moment. What does it really mean to be in a community? And has Facebook destroyed the term community forever? But whatever it is that you are building there, it is incredible. So my heartfelt thanks to all of you for being here. For more of these amazing events and actions and incredible reporting, please head over to the organisers of this event, the Citizens, and subscribe to their newsletter. there should be on the screen. Yes, here we go. So yeah, dispatch.thecitizen.com. And I would just recommend they have paid subscriptions, which means that you can give your hard-earned money to accessing incredible journalism and the real information that we need to make good choices right now. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here today.